Anthony McGowan's books have been described as vulgar, boisterous, sensitive, wise and funny.
Arse cheese.
The fart of ill omen.
Bum fluff.
I thought they were better than most books that I've read, because I haven't read many books, so...
His award-winning book, Henry Tumour, is about a boy with a talking brain tumour.
I like the guy who was in the classroom with a crocodile head. yeah, he tried to have sex with a crocodile head.
And the author's previous book, Hellbent, tells of a teenager's gross comic adventures in hell.
It's quite rude, but it's quite funny at the same time.
Eyeball and scrotum burgers.
Arse kicking, nipple squeezing.
Pool of puke.
Anthony McGowan is visiting Varndine School in Brighton. To make an author visit go well, here's some basic rules. Make sure the pupils know who he is.
Anthony who?
Make sure they've read his work.
Didn't he write Stormbreaker?
Prepare some good questions.
What's your favourite colour?
Find a suitable location for the visit.
The canteen's free for an hour.
And publicise the event with posters and artwork. But pupils at Varndine are much better prepared. Year 9s are getting stuck into his books and some are checking him out on the internet.
Anthony McGowan was born in a stable in a small town where his parents had gone to take part in a census. At the age of 7, he was sent to sea to work as a cabin boy on a whaling vessel, before returning to spend 2 years in an all-girls convent school. He has worked as a camel jockey in Arabia, as an overseer on a banana plantation on the west coast of Ireland, as the editor of the prestigious Hackenthorpe Book of Lies, and as a nightclub bouncer. He is a Doctor of Philosophy and once wrote an academic article claiming that Stephen Hawking is an evil puppet. Only 3 of these facts are true.
I think the bit about being born in a stable is wrong because, say he's 40, that means he was born like 1945. Well, they weren't born in stables then. They were either born at a house or in a hospital.
All girls convent schools. Not true, definitely.
At the age of 7, he was sent to sea to work as a cabin boy. He could have done that.
Anthony McGowan lives in London with his wife and 2 young children. A few minutes' walk from his home is a graveyard.
I discovered this place almost by accident, and I found it a really beautiful place to sit and think. It's almost like a part of the countryside, but right in the middle of London.
He's working on another teenage novel, as well as his 3rd thriller for adults.
One of the great challenges for a writer is to think of interesting names for your characters. And I've got 2 sources. Either I pick on real people that I knew, often my old school friends, or I wander around graveyards and find names there. It's quite interesting. It's Basil George Wood, Wood spelt with 2 Ds. I might use that. I quite like the idea of a character called Wood with 2 Ds. He's obsessed with the fact that people keep getting his name wrong. He always says, my name's Wood with 2 Ds. It's interesting.
With one book about a journey into hell and another about a boy with a brain tumour, McGowan's choice of subjects appears somewhat morbid.
It's strange, because I'm actually not a morbid person at all. Maybe it kind of leaked out my subconscious somehow. But I think I was trying to make the story dramatic, and one way of making a story dramatic is to slip in death or disease. But I suppose I was more taken with the comic possibilities rather than the morbid ones of the 2 situations. So really, I'm a cheery person, not a morbid one. Chapter 1, The Ice Cream Van of the Apocalypse. OK, so I guess you've been told that there's nothing to be scared of about dying. And as for being dead, well, who the hell cares? In school, you either get some happy-clappy failed priest of an RE teacher with moist hands and greasy trousers who tells you that everyone gets to go to heaven. Or there's Mr. Hepcat's sociology guy with a wisp of Rizzler stuck to his lip, who thinks he's shocking the kids when he says that when we go, we go. No God, no devil, no bullshit about punishment or reward. Not even the hippie stuff about joining the stars or becoming one with the universe. Just a big, black nothing forever. Well, they only say that because they don't know. But let me tell you something. Let me tell you right now. I do. I know. Dying hurts, and being dead hurts. Hurts like hell. I know, so how do I know? Let me go back a bit. Back to the fart. The fart of ill omen. The fart of doom. And I went to probably the worst school in Leeds. This is obviously a really good comprehensive school. I went to a terrible, terrible school. And it was full of kind of, all the kids were mad and all the teachers were mad. And back in those days, I'm not saying that teachers aren't allowed to hit you anymore, are they? No. When I was at school, the only way teachers could control us was by whacking you. And the favourite method of control was this ruler. And it's about this big, and it had a steel kind of iron rim at the bottom of it. And if you were naughty, you had to put your hand out and make you wait for about a minute, and then they'd whack you over the knuckles with this iron ruler. I've always thought that books are really made out of two things as an author. They're made out partly of your experiences, or I'd even perhaps rather change that and say out of your memories, because memory does something to experiences. It warps them and twists them. So I think books are made partly out of your memories, but also for me, this is really crucial, books are made out of other books. You know, I've always kind of based books that I've written on earlier texts. Anyone heard of Dante's Inferno? Perhaps the Moby Dick man might have read it. No? It's anyway, it was written about 600 years ago, and it's a very serious poem about theology and philosophy and about the kind of politics of Florence in the 15th century, 14th century, maybe 13th century. So it sounds very stuffy and difficult, but it's also kind of packed full of fart jokes, it turns out. It's a story of a man who goes on a journey through hell, and he meets various people while he's in hell. And in my mind, these two ideas kind of began to come together, the idea of writing a book about my school days and a book set in hell. So I had the idea of having a teenager, a boy, who's killed and goes to hell and has adventures there. And this did become my first book, called Hellbent.
Did you base the characters, Connor and Phil, on any, to a real person? Yeah,
well, I suppose Connor's a version of me, as is Hector Brunty in the second book. It's very hard not to base your main character on you. Phil Gilroy was a real person. I did something quite naughty. I actually used a lot of the names of my actual friends, meaning to change them later. But also what's really weird when you're a writer is once you give someone a name, it's very hard to change it later on. It'd be like someone saying that you're not... What's your name?
Lauren.
Yes, you're not called Lauren anymore, you're called Tracy. It just wouldn't be right, would it? It's almost the same when you create a character. You can't just change their name. It's rude. Who would like that?
In Henry Tumour, there's a character from Hellbent, the guy that got knocked down by the ice cream van. Did you mean to do that?
Yeah, I really feel like I'm writing one huge book. I said that my adult thrillers, they have characters as well, which kind of crop up in the teenage books. You know, I do think that certainly that the way I go about writing books is that I'm creating a whole fictional universe, and I've got to make it all fit together. You know, also it's really weird when you finish a book and you've lived with these characters for a year, and suddenly that they're gone. I can't really cope with that. So I like the idea that they carry on living somewhere in this fictional universe that I've created.
What's more important to you, your book being published or you enjoying writing it?
As a writer, what you want, most of all, it's not money, it's readers. You know, you want that feeling that you're connecting with people. When I first wrote Hellbent, the first book I wrote, I was really excited about it because I thought it was going to get published. And when it wasn't, when it was rejected initially, I was very, very depressed about it. Because I thought that potential link with other minds was gone forever. So, you know, if I wasn't going to be published again, I probably wouldn't write more novels. I'd just write more terrible poetry. Because, you know, writing a novel as well, it takes a year to write a novel. It's a big chunk out of your life.
What influenced you to write all the offensive language in your books?
Well, I got into quite a lot of trouble about the language, and I was amazed. I thought my books weren't controversial at all, because I was trying to be funny, and you know, in some ways the message is quite soft. It's about be nice to each other. It's about don't lie, don't steal, don't kill. But just because I use the occasional kind of rich, earthy language, my books have been banned from quite a few libraries and schools. You know, it'd be really strange if I wrote a book for teenagers that you know, where the worst thing anyone said was "oh blast." You know, it just wouldn't be realistic. But that's one justification. But also that the bad language that I use is meant to be kind of rich and poetic. You know, there's a whole chapter on Hellbent about telling you not to use casual swear words, to use interesting swear words. You know, I like the rich, kind of complex use of language, even when you're, you know, taking the piss out of each other. My target audience is, I suppose, me and my friends when I was 16. So I'm writing for the kind of person that I used to be, which in some ways is the kind of person I still am. In the back of my mind, I have got this idea of trying to encourage boys to read in particular. So that's why perhaps there's some of the cruder jokes are in there, to try and hook the boys and then suck them in, and they'll suddenly find, in fact, they're reading a fairly complex philosophical novel. But I don't know. I don't want to be. I haven't got designs on kids. I mainly want to entertain and amuse them. And if they're also educated along the way, then excellent. So setting, characters, plot. And what I'd like you to do is just among yourselves, in a kind of brainstorming way, I'd like you to give me a setting. Now, it can be whatever you want. A lot of writers say, write about what you know. I think that's too limiting. Your setting can be this school, it could be Brighton, it could be Moonbase Alpha in the year 8000. Secondly, I want 3 characters, and I want you to spend most of your time on the characters. And then I want 3 lines coming out of the character, and at the end of that line, I want 3 adjectives. Finally, I want a quick plot. In some ways, the plot's the least important thing here.
I'm doing mine in a cottage by a riverside.
Spaceman for Harley Davidson. The Harley Davidson spaceship.
And what I want there is luminous details. So tell me a few facts about your Uranus, which then do a lot of work.
The setting is in a high-tech mansion in Bahamas. They have a huge helipad on the roof, triple garage, and an indoor swimming pool.
And the characters are a space dog called Felix, who's loyal and wise. He can't really speak, but you hear him thinking all the time. He's like, oh my god, these idiots.
A mysterious man gets out of the car. She starts talking a lot to him. Then he lures her into his car, into his jetpack car. Then drives off into the night. Then scarily says, "Oh, sorry, I'm lost." Then chuckles.
Fantastic. If you decide to write those stories, you might find that you didn't stick to the plot, that your characters dragged you in really weird directions. I mean, certainly I've written books where I've had an idea about what I wanted to happen, and the characters just didn't want to do it. And I couldn't make them, so they took me in the direction they wanted to go. I think that's almost a good sign. That means that you've created something which is a kind of living, breathing being. Because I think the opening line to a book is really crucial. You've got to really grab the reader by the short and curlies in that space. If you've got a boring first line or first paragraph, people are just going to put the books down. There's too many other things people do these days. If you want to write the first line to your stories, you could email them to me through my publisher, and I'll send a prize to the best one. Been fantastic. I hadn't really been into a school since I was a school kid myself. And so I had no real idea what teenagers are like. All of my books are about teenagers. I was taking the gamble that there was still enough in common with the way I was when I was 16 or 15. I think that there just about is.
It inspired me to maybe read some more books, especially the ones he mentioned, because I don't particularly read many books, and the ones he suggested sound quite interesting.
I was really impressed with the quality of the opening lines that the students produced, and all of these, you really do want to find out what happens next. So picking the winner was a bit of a lottery. Also, I suppose that then I plumped for the one that was closest to my own personal taste, which was quite a funny opening. Shall I read it for you? It begins. We've arrived. I really must learn to drive. I quite like the combination of drama and humour in Jack's entry, which is why I chose him as the winner.